Major carrier conversions, however, were better off in this regard. These are the battle cruiser conversions, and I suppose the two battleship conversions too. The Courageous class conversions, including Furious, would prove to be far more useful in this role than they would have been in gun duels in their original guise. Though, Furious did take a few steps to get there. In fact, the progression of HMS Furious is an excellent example, for those interested, in the development of aircraft carriers, moving from a bow-mounted flight deck with her big gun on the stern to a bow and stern deck with the superstructure in the middle. That stage was arguably her worst because it made landing a bit of a nightmare from exhaust fumes and wind kicked up by the superstructure, while not really improving her launching capabilities at all. When she was finally made a proper carrier like her half-sisters, Furious would end up being the only one to survive World War II, which is something of a historical irony if there ever was one. In any event, the British conversions are some of the least efficient of the bunch, though good for showing how the process developed. These ships were built up with more than one flight deck, showing the initial stumbling steps of carrier design. If you're building up on a converted hull anyway, well, you can experiment a bit more than you could with a purpose-built one. And it seemed like a good idea at the time to have lighter aircraft take off from the lower deck and sending heavier aircraft from the upper one. In the end, it would prove to be a dead end, but one that would crop up surprisingly late in interwar designs, even if it never went anywhere again. The initial conversions over in Japan followed this trend. The Kagi and Kaga would both have triple-tier flight decks, which took the British idea to the next logical step. This was done to increase the speed of launching and recovering planes, though in practice it would, again, prove to be ineffective as planes grew heavier. Both of these carriers would thus be converted again to have only a single full-length flight deck later on. Kaga is actually a good example of another issue with converting ships, that of not knowing exactly what you're doing. She had consistent issues with the exhaust fumes from her power plant. The Japanese couldn't quite figure out how to do this properly, resulting in Kaga having her fumes first diverted in a massive pair of stacks along her side, and then, later on, still directed down instead of up when she was converted again. While the later change was not terrible, her initial design was certainly questionable. It did nothing to really solve the issue of hot gases interfering with landing operations, while causing real issues with cooking the crew, who were unfortunate enough to berth near the quote-unquote funnels. Kaga would never quite shake the reputation of being a space heater, really. Though, as I said, that's part and parcel with conversions, because oftentimes they're experimental, and you're not quite sure exactly what you're doing yet when you convert something. In this regard, the other battleship conversion, HMS Eagle, would also show this problem, namely in the fact that her design had some inefficiencies. She was slow, short, and her aviation fuel storage was suboptimal. All of these came from her nature as a conversion of a small and relatively slow battleship. Converting a battleship to a carrier in those days was less ideal than converting a battlecruiser. True enough that a battleship was better protected, but that mattered little for a carrier. The lack of speed and the shorter hulls would result in ships that were less good at the job of a carrier. Though, battleship conversions aren't necessarily a bad thing. The later conversion of Shinano had the potential to be a very good carrier, had the Japanese built her as a proper carrier instead of some weird depot ship / carrier. As for HMS Eagle, as heavier planes required a greater headwind, a slow ship like Eagle just couldn't manage as well. That the British insisted on loading her up with 6-inch guns and a fire director tripod are further examples of the weirdness of early
The ship is on fire!
which is admittedly not at all limited to the British or Japanese. While I stand by the Lexingtons, and Saratoga in particular, as being underappreciated in comparison to something like Enterprise, I will admit they weren't perfect in their own right. The best of the carrier conversions in the interwar period, certainly, by quite a lot. But not perfect.
ship is on fire! Problem solved, sir. Torpedoes, direct front. Torpedoes, dead ahead. All stations, reporting the position of a strategic target. I need help.
We've destroyed an enemy battleship.
Attack! Enemy aircraft! Repel air attack!
Torpedoes, dead ahead.
Requesting assistance. Roger.
they surely know for whom the bell tolls. Time marches on for whom the bell tolls. Take a look to the sky just before you die. It's the last time you will. Like a raw, massive roar fills the crumbling sky. Shattered gold fills the soul with a ruthless cry. Stagger down what is rise to this misery. In silence so loud. Crack of dawn, all is gone except the will to be. Now they'll see what they blinded eyes to see. For whom the bell tolls, time marches on. For whom the bell tolls. Sometimes war is killing, sometimes it's saving lives. It's the judgment of fate, it's nothing that man can dictate. Corporal Leslie Allen carried them from Tambu, saved his brothers in arms, went out and followed through. Again, Bull just carried on. Under fire, he carried them out one by one. There and back again, bullets all around. All of the men that he carried away, 12 men would now live to see one more day. His spear held at bay as he carried them away. Sometimes war is killing, sometimes it's saving lives. From Australia's shore, Bull Allen went to war. Sometimes war is saving, sometimes it's taking lives. Thanks to one single man, a dozen more survives. Then back again, Bull just carried on. Under fire, he carried them out one by one. There and back again, bullets all around. All of the men that he carried away, 12 men would now live to see one more day. unwilling to brag, alive and humble at heart. No, there and back again, Bull just carried on. Under fire, he carried them out one by one. There and back again, bullets all around. All of the men that he carried away, 12 men would now live to see one more day. His spear held at bay as he carried them away. Two ways to view the world, so similar at times. Two ways to rule the world, to justify their crimes. By kings and queens, young men are sent to die in war. Their propaganda speaks those words been heard before. Two ways to view the world brought you